According to the CDC, about 1 in 20,000 eggs are infected with salmonella. So if you use raw eggs in your recipes and you're concerned about the risk, then this video is for you. So the traditional way that people have pasteurized eggs at home is to use hot water. Yes, that means basically taking a pan like this and heating up the water on the stovetop. And what you want to do is bring the temperature up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the rationale for this is that we know from food science that bacteria thrives between 41 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So the idea is, yes, if you bring it up to 140 or a little bit higher, that will pretty much kill off the infection and you're assured of safe food handling. Now, that sounds easy in theory, but I found in practice that it's actually very difficult. And the reason is because we have such a narrow temperature range that we need to hit, right? Basically, we're talking only 1 degrees, basically 140, maybe up to 142, and that's it, right? So there I was, frantically, adjusting the flame on my stovetop. I've got a pot of cold water to bring the temperature down when it overshoots, and I'm going back and forth. And even when it worked, I didn't really have an assurance that the infection had been killed off because there was so much temperature fluctuation. And that's not the feeling that you want when you're talking about salmonella and your health. So I thought about it, and then I realized, hey, wait a second, isn't there a machine that's very good at keeping precise temperature control for water, right? And of course, we're talking about the sous vide process and the immersion circulator. So let's take a look at the equipment that we need, and I'll walk you through the process. So this is the immersion circulator, and this is the device that makes the sous vide process possible. I'm not going to get into details about sous vide. What I do recommend is that you watch a video as an introduction to the sous vide process, and there is a channel called Sous Vide Everything, and it's put out by a bunch of great guys. They're fun, knowledgeable, and they put out a intro video about sous vide that's very entertaining and very informative. So I do recommend that you check that out, right? But what I want to talk about at this point is the cost of the machine, right? I checked online retailers. They usually go for about $60 to $90. And that's actually very, very inexpensive. These machines used to cost thousands of dollars and were only used by top-end commercial restaurants. But now the technology has been made more affordable. And so it's actually quite easy to do the sous vide process at home. And so whether the cost of it is worth it to you is obviously a personal decision. For me, being able to pasteurize eggs effortlessly and remove the risk of salmonella in eggs is worth it to me. And obviously there are other uses for the sous vide process. So I'll leave it to you to decide whether it's worth the investment or not. In terms of the cost, the other thing that I want to say is that some of the more expensive machines usually have an app attached to them where you can control the temperature and the time for submersion through the app. I know that people are happy with that, but for me, I consider that another potential point of failure. And what I noticed is that the machines with the apps are more expensive. So the sous vide process itself is actually quite simple, and the interface is quite easy to use. So the machine that I got, and again, I'm not going to show you the brand name because I'm not trying to promote anything, but it's from a German manufacturer, and their philosophy is that they're using very high quality components without the added complexity of an app. And I found it very easy to use, and I'm quite happy with it, right? So the other thing I wanted to mention is that there is an alternative process for pasteurizing your eggs at home, but that involves cracking the egg open and pasteurizing the egg white and the egg yolk. I'll do a follow-up video on that, but that's more appropriate when you're ready to actually use the raw eggs in your recipe. This process that I'm showing you now is great for pasteurizing the eggs and storing them at home. And you can store them in your fridge for easily up to a week, probably 2 weeks, and they'll still be good, right? Now let's talk about the amount of time that you want to submerge the eggs, because that's also very important. It's important that you submerge them in the water long enough for the core temperature of the eggs to rise to 140, right? So traditionally, what you would do is you would bring the eggs to room temperature, and then you would put them in the hot water and leave them on, like I said, for 3 to 5 minutes. For added convenience, I'm going to skip that step. So you'll be able to take the eggs directly from your fridge and treat them in the sous vide process. And in that case, I recommend that you keep them in the immersion in the hot water for at least 15 minutes. That's 3 times the amount of time that you would do it for a large egg. And one of the advantages of sous vide is that because the temperature control is so precise, you don't have to worry about the eggs cooking, right? So let's move on to the actual demonstration of pasteurization, and you'll see how it's done. Okay, so let's start the sous vide process. And first, I wanted to explain to you the meaning of the displays on the machine. So let's start with the big number up on top. That is a temperature reading of the water that's currently inside the pot, right? My faucet has hot water with a temperature of about 108 degrees Fahrenheit. So here's what I did as a tip for you guys. I took the pot of water, put it on my stovetop, and I heated it up to about 123, as you can see. So that speeds up the process, and so you don't have to wait quite as long. And so that's what you're seeing right here, right? That is the temperature of the water. Now, the second number that you're seeing right here is the target temperature that you want the water to hit. Right now, it's set at 164 degrees Fahrenheit, and so we're going to have to adjust that. And the way to do that is you push temperature button, and then you rotate the dial so that it goes up to, obviously we don't want 160. We want to hit exactly 140. I'm going to set it at 141 because even the sous vide process, no, in fact, let's call it 140.5, right? Because the sous vide process itself, even though it's extremely precise, it does have some variation. So I'll set it at 140.5 to give us a little bit of buffer. And now we're going to set the time. And so you push this dial right here, and it's beeping the hour, and we only want the minute. So I push again. Oops. You got to do it fast, actually. And then I'm going to set it for 15 minutes. And then press the dial again. So now it's set. And we can push the play button to get us started. So what's going to happen now is, by the way, don't be bothered about the little rumbling noise. Sometimes the way I put the machine into the clamp is not quite set, but it's not a problem. But so what's going to happen now is the immersion circulator is going to start circulating the water and heating up to our the target temperature of 140, and then it's going to beep at us to let us know that it's ready. So we'll come back when that happens. Okay, so we're back. So like I said, the immersion circulator was heating up the water and circulating it, and we can see that the temperature that it now measures is 140.2. That's precisely the temperature that we need. And the great thing about this machine is that it will maintain that temperature throughout. And if you look at the setting here, it shows 15 minutes, which confirms that we're going to submerge it for, 15 minutes, right? And you see, once again, the target temperature range. So I have prepared 3 eggs that I want to pasteurize because I'm going to make pasta carbonara. And so what you do is you keep the bag open, and essentially you're using the pressure of the water as it submerges to squeeze air out. And you know what? Actually, we don't really need to use the plastic bag because the shells actually protect the egg yolk. But I want to make sure that the eggs don't move around and the shells are cracking. That the shells don't crack. So I'm going to go ahead and use the plastic bag. and have them submerged. And you can see, you know, the water's kind of hot, so I like to use a wooden spoon to keep them under. And then it's not absolutely necessary that you even seal the bag for this application, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that and just kind of lean them against the side, and it should be fine. Let me make sure though that they're underwater. Right, so if they're not underwater, it's because there's a little bit too much air in the bag, so you do need to press down. But that's pretty much it. So we're gonna come back when the 15 minutes have passed, and I'll share one last tip with you guys to complete this process. Okay, we're back. So I think it's about to start beeping because it's almost out of time, and there it goes. So I wanted to show you how that works as well. And we've left the eggs in the water bath for 15 minutes, and that should pretty much guarantee that. Here, let me turn that off. And so, sorry, like I was saying, we left the eggs in the water bath for 15 minutes, and that should pretty much guarantee that the eggs are pasteurized. They're fine to eat raw now. Now, theoretically, you could leave the eggs in the water bath for an hour, right? And the eggs would be pasteurized, and the proteins in the eggs would not be cooked at all. That's the beauty of sous vide, right? And that's what makes this whole process so easy and effortless. So let's take the eggs out of the plastic bag, and we'll come back and I'll share one last tip with you guys. Had the eggs sitting in an ice water bath for about 10 minutes. I do this because it's a better idea to cool them down before putting them back in the fridge, so they don't cook or they don't heat up my other eggs. But so since we pasteurize these eggs and we're going to store them, it's a good idea to make sure that we don't get them confused with the unpasteurized eggs. So what I do is, after I've had a chance to cool them down, I'm going to pat them dry, right? I'm going to pat them dry, and I'm going to mark them, right? So I get, let me see if I can see this, an indelible marker, and you can put an X on top to denote that they're pasteurized, or you can draw a little happy face, right? And then you know that they're safe to eat. So there it is.